class, I wanted to record this video to go over our first milestone and kind of discuss what is expected. So I am actually looking at our milestone 1 guidelines and rubric, and as you can see, I've highlighted several portions to bring them to your attention. Basically, what you are going to do in this milestone is serve as an accountant and basically provide professional judgments, which means that you as an auditor have to be fair, unbiased, and you have to provide materially correct information. Note that in our unqualified audit opinion, we state that the financial statements are free of material misstatement, not that they are free from error or fraud, although we must test for fraud. So the purpose of this assessment is to get you more acquainted with the process of auditing and what you have to do with auditing information. So what we're going to do is explore how to plan an audit, what we need to do to analyze the financial statements. We also have to perform tests on that information. We'll talk about tests of internal controls, and we'll also talk about tests for the balances. So those are substantive testing, test of account details, and test of account balances. And lastly, we actually need to professionally and properly communicate the results of the audit, which is usually via management rep letters and also memos that are in our audit work papers that we share with management. But the ultimate report is an audit report, which is the opinion. So what you're going to do for this particular project is you're going to serve as an internal audit staff, and you have to obtain 2 years of financial statements information from any one of these companies: Walmart, Target, Sears, Kroger, or Amazon. So that's your company choice, and you're going to get 2 years worth of financial statements with their most recent audit report. So audits are usually done annually, even though we do quarterly updates, but usually annually we issue the opinion. So that means you're going to look for the 10K, and I would recommend going to SEC Edgar and just typing in the company name or the symbol, and then looking for a 10K and analyzing the most current 10K and then the previous one. And so what you're going to do as part of an internal audit function is you're going to actually have to prepare for a revenue audit. And in doing so, you need to identify and assess business risk. And more importantly, you need to develop an audit plan that would mitigate those risks in order to help our audit findings. So as part of this process, you're going to have to pretty much create a report which has the appropriate memos. So for this particular milestone, you're going to draft procedures and field work required for conducting your audit process. So basically, you have to be specific and state how you will conduct the audit, and you basically need to note analytical procedures, which is where we're basically analyzing the 2 years of financial information, and we might do that through ratio analysis and comparing that ratio analysis to the industry standards. Okay, you're also going to explain the field work that is needed for high-risk business transactions. Revenue and the subsequent cash collections are always among the highest risk of any audit. So field work, remember, is when the audit team is out, usually the external audit team is out at the client location pulling samples and actually testing. So from an internal audit function, you pretty much do this throughout the entire year because you work for that organization. So not only do you need to explain the field work for revenue and cash, then you also have to create a test that will assess management's assertions for revenue. So if you recall management assertions, it could be completeness, disclosure, valuation. So those are some of the assertions, and then you have to provide a test for them. So here you're going to outline the fieldwork and procedures when you're conducting an internal audit report. So first you need to describe how you would conduct the audit process. So you're obviously going to have to do some analytical procedures, right? You're going to have to look at some transactions, and basically the starting point would be the previous year and the current year audited in the previous year, 2-year comparison. Then you want to explain the field work needed for revenue. So obviously revenue, we're concerned with revenue recognition. There is a new auditing standard there has been new guidelines for revenue recognition, and we follow auditing standards from PCAOB for external audits. So in here, what you want to note is that revenue is obviously highly tested, and you have to make sure it's complete, it's recorded properly at the correct amount, and it's also recorded in the correct period. Revenue tends to be overstated or moved from one period to another to meet goals, which is not appropriate. Lastly, you have to create a test that basically tests the management assertion. So if it is completeness, did all the revenue get recorded in the period? What are you doing to do that? Well, you're going to probably have to do a substantiative test, which would be a test of account balance or a test of account details. You can possibly do a reasonableness test for the account balance to see, okay, you start with the ending balance from last year as your beginning balance. You would add cash sales, right? You would add sales, and then you would subtract any types of like say returns, allowances, and discounts to get your net revenue and see if that reasonably matches your financial statements or what you currently are showing on the general ledger. And so that would be a test of account balance. You can also, more likely than not, you're going to have to do a test of account details, which is you're going to look at all of the transactions and revenue and make a sample selection and then test that to make sure that it's recorded in the correct period, that the revenue, that the merchandise was actually shipped, and that the revenue was proper to be recognized. So the key that I want you to focus on is the rubric. So here you need to describe the procedures, which would include analytical procedures. You're probably also going to mention you're going to have to do substantive procedures such as test of details or test of account balances. Then you're going to explain the appropriate field work needed for revenue. So you're obviously going to have to do a test of account balance, which is the reasonableness test, or you could do a test of account details by looking at the general ledger every transaction, possibly selecting a sample, having that sample get the supporting documentation, which would be the invoice, the shipping documents, and obviously the whole way the invoice starts is with a sales order, right? A customer orders an item, gives the company a sales order like Amazon, then you go ahead, Amazon has the merchandise, it ships it, and it could record the revenue. That's appropriate fieldwork testing. And that you're basically detailing that test in the procedures, you're creating it for revenue. And then lastly, you want to make sure that you have no errors and be sure to include APA citations. I hope this helps.